My name is Steve Ellis again, and I'm a philosophy professor at the University of Oklahoma. Part of the reason why I'm here is because I coached the Ethics Bowl team at OU. I sort of fell into that, to tell you the truth. The business school started to put it together, and I have some experience with academic debate. My department chair mentioned that to one of his buddies who was over at the business school, so they volunteered me to help, and I loved it, so I kept coming back. So this is my sort of fourth year involved with this sort of stuff. It's actually been really productive for us because of the contacts that I made through that. The University of Oklahoma sort of the Price College of Business came to our department and said, hey, we would like you guys to sort of teach business ethics curriculum for us, and now there's a mandatory course for all of the students at the University of Oklahoma in the business school, so I pretty much get to see all of them, which is, it's good for me. I hope it's good for them. We'll see. You can judge that after we talk a little bit about today. And do you guys want to introduce yourselves first? Why don't you introduce yourselves, and then we'll actually do the program.
Again, my name is Dr. Jeff Simmons, and I've been primarily working with the ethics competition as well. Similar to Steve, I kind of fell into that about 3 years ago. Mrs. Elaine Kelly, who's one of our accounting professors here and has done a lot with OK Ethics Consortium, came to me and said, hey, you teach business ethics, you need to put together a team because we're hosting this competition here this coming October. And this was, I believe it was late August. Yeah. And so 3 years ago, we tried to figure out how to throw together a team and go from there. I love it. In fact, when they came and asked me to serve as the interim dean, I said, well, I'm not sure if I want to do that because I don't want to give up perhaps maybe the favorite aspect of my job right now, which is working with our ethics team. And so they said, I don't have to give that up. I can continue doing that. So then therefore I agreed to step into that role. But it's a very rewarding experience, and I think I thank the OK Ethics and Colin and everybody else for putting in their time, because it's a true blessing to our students and honestly our society, because you're right, so eventually these guys will be maybe managing our pensions or something like that. When you said that, Colin turned almost as white as the tablecloth. I had my hand on my cell phone about ready to call 911 if necessary, but yeah. So I want to add to Steve, though, that he's rather humble because we have a great resource here. He successfully took a team to place second at nationals last year. So you're very humble by not referencing that. So
you guys were in the out rounds.
Yeah. So anyways, it's really good.
It turns out we're all really good at this activity. Oh, it's good.
Yeah.
I'm Kathy Terrell, and I'm the chair and professor of accounting, and I got into this because of Shannon. Actually, Tulsa had some ethics challenges, and we finally began to participate in those. We went a year and kind of spied on it and tried to figure out if this was something we could do. And in 2008, I took the first team to Texas, and my team consisted of 3 very intelligent and articulate people, and they were not 19. They were older than that. And when we went down there, I said, whatever you do, if we win the toss, throw it to the other team because we have no idea what they're doing. What we were doing here was giving them a case, and they'd go to their rooms and then they'd present the cases, and that was the type of challenge that we had. And debate just scared me to death because I was not skilled in it. I know what they are. I understand how they do it. But this is no notes, nothing. You go in there with what's in your brain, and you have to react. So anyway, 2008, we finally won in Texas, came in behind Steve and just right ahead of you in Texas this year, and went to nationals, and it was great. We had an excellent time. It's a lot of work. We meet with our kids 4 to 5 hours a week, every week. When we get close to a tournament, it's Sunday, mock presentations. And this year, the team I had only had one that had gone before. So when we went to Oklahoma, my team was like, oh my, and didn't do so well. And then we went to Texas and won all 3 of our rounds. So we were really excited, but they had a very fast learning curve. And again, they had not seen it except for one. And so it's a lot of work, but it is so rewarding and so much fun. I have a great team, Dr. Orr and Charles Gray, and occasionally my husband steps in when we get to the mocks. We have a lot of people that come in and look as we do those, and that's a great way to kind of set it up. So.
We should probably repeat the motto that I think it was an OU student that came up with. We tell them to go beat Texas in the most ethical way possible. And we've done really well. The last couple are cleaned up.
Yeah. That's true.
I'm surprised that they
Well, that was one thing I was going to suggest is regardless of your level of success at a state tournament, I highly recommend that you go on, especially if it's your first year, to go on and do the Texas Regional Tournament as well. Because our very first year, we were just the same way. We had no clue. I had no clue of what we were doing, and actually, honestly, it was rather embarrassing, right here on our home turf. But then we sent a group of students down to the regionals that exact same year, a month later, and they did a little bit better, and I learned a lot more. So I say, regardless of the level of success you have at the state tournament, go on down to the Texas Regional. Maybe that just for no other reason other than to give Oklahoma even more of an opportunity to perhaps beat Texas teams.
I'll go ahead and sort of start with I don't know, we sort of had the division of labor on the program, so I get to tell you how to engage students, and in a way, it's sort of it's sort of funny as that's my job, because there's a certain sense in which I'm not the kind of person who has to recruit people off of the streets. I get a lot of, in general, just for my ethics classes, the Price Business College delivers, it turns out. I get a package of 300 students per semester, whether I want them or not. So I really think of my job as sort of engaging students as a matter of sort of retention. I think, or at least I've found this, and maybe it's because of my sort of philosopher background, that there's so much sort of inherent interest in ethical topics, especially among young adults. If you just sort of throw out a topic in a conversation that has some ethical angle, they find it, and they want to tell you about it. People want to share what they think. They're very much into sort of evaluating and assessing their environments. I mean, the people are not shy about letting you know how they feel about things. And I think a lot of what I think of my job as doing is sort of nurturing that sort of aspect, so they'll continue to be interested without sort of letting the structure sort of strangle the interest. Because even though sort of people are in a way natural-born philosophers, they're not always very good natural-born philosophers, it turns out. I mean, people have things that they need to learn. And one of the nice things about sort of the ethics curriculum that we sort of put together with Price and just sort of our own departmental ethics curriculum is that it's good at teaching people ethical theory. It's good at teaching people how to apply ethical theory. And that's actually an important skill. Or knowing that sort of conceptual knowledge is actually really important for the students. But I think the thing that really retains interest, and this is sort of the major theme of what I want to say in my short allotted time, is I think if that's all that you're trying to do in an ethics class, I think it tends to lead the students to lose interest because they become somewhat overconfident. I mean, once you sort of let people know that they have thought about these sorts of things and the kinds of moral theories that you've talked about are not completely esoteric. They track familiar patterns of moral reasoning. Once people realize that their sort of intuition about something probably has sort of a Kantian style basis. I mean, the joke in philosophy is you can't become a famous philosopher until you're dead for 300 years. And today's common sense was breaking news 400 years ago. That kind of thing. I mean, that helps the students sort of connect their own thoughts. They can say, oh yeah, that is sort of a Lockean insight or something like that. But the problem is once you tell them that, they're like, oh, I got this. I'm done, right? What do I need you for? Now I'll just go and converse myself. And there's actually a really important reason why ethics should be part of the curriculum. And it actually has some stuff to do that, again, everything has ancient roots, right? So I'm thinking there's an Aristotelian theme in here that modern-day psychologists are starting to rediscover about the importance of ethics as a practice and the importance of this field that people call moral psychology. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with, there's sort of a bunch of popular books out about this. So Jonathan Haidt is one of the authors. We had Mary Gentile last year at this sort of thing, and this is the issue that she was talking about. Daniel Kahneman had a best-selling book that's relevant called what? Golly, I just completely blanked on the name of the book. It's Thinking Fast and Slow, Thinking, Fast and Slow. And the idea is essentially that human beings left to their own native resources tend to make various kinds of cognitive mistakes. We have a fast thought system that's relatively automatic. It doesn't require a lot of sort of cognitive inputs. And it's very useful for making familiar kinds of decisions. It doesn't screw up very often. But when you put it in a situation that it's not used to, you get all kinds of cognitive biases and mistakes. And it turns out most of our sort of ethical thoughts come from Kahneman calls it system one thought. So the fast and furious, you're good at making decisions on things that you know a lot about. But it leads to lots of errors. And there's a system two thought, which is slower and more deliberative and more reflective. And one of the things that I've sort of taken to doing in my ethics classes now, which I really think helps interest as well as sort of learning people things, is sort of trying to get the students to see that being ethical isn't a matter of knowing stuff. You have to know stuff. That's a necessary condition. But it's a matter of having the right kinds of habits and developing the right kind of character when you know when you need to slow down and think hard about something, and when you have trained your sort of automatic system to make good decisions on on everyday kind of basis. So a lot of what's really important about ethics now you can frame as a kind of skill. Ethics is a practice. It's something that you can get better at. And I think when you sort of frame it to students that way, they're interested because they see where they've screwed up. If you ask someone, and this is what I thought was really great about Mary Gentile last year, she asked a lot of her Harvard business students, tell me a time when you were in a situation where you didn't think your values were being represented on the job. And the answer was, it was mostly people who had been out in the workforce who had come back to business school, and virtually everyone had some story. And then the second follow-up question is, well, what'd you do about it? And half the time the answer was nothing. So part of what she was interested in was getting people to sort of learn how to stand up for their own values. The program is called Giving Voice to Values. It's fantastic. I use elements of that in my class, a lot of interesting case studies and stuff. But sort of standing back from a little bit more of a theoretical perspective, since I'm a philosopher, the idea that there's a skill to be learned where the skill involves a certain kind of recognition of morally salient features in your environment, and then a skill about learning how to do something about it, I think is absolutely just essential. And I try to give that skill to sort of all of my students, right? I mean, when I think about retention, I think about the sort of broad student engagement that we all are involved with. But I also think about the ethics bowl as sort of almost like the the intense training for leadership, and framing it that way to the Ethics Bowl kids really brings them in. To sort of put together an Ethics Bowl team, you've got to get your foot in the door somehow. So you canvass people, you try to find the smartest kids that you can. Once you find those smart kids, though, what just hooks them, almost like they're addicted, is this idea that they can learn something that will help them improve their behavior in their lives, and it's a skill that they have that they can hone. I really do think, especially really intelligent college students, they want to learn various kinds of skills. They want to know how to play the game well. They want to know how to do the video game well. They want to know how to study well. Well, they want to know how to do ethics well as well. And one of the things that Ethics Bowl allows them to do is to sort of practice those skills. So, I have a lot to say about Ethics Bowl if people want to hear it. But the main thing that I think is great about Ethics Bowl and framing it this way to the students really gets them engaged with it is it's competitive, and they like to compete, right? They want to compare skills as well as develop them. But it's competitive in a way that reinforces the sort of ethical lessons. If you really look at the details of the rules and such, it's not that it's, what's the best way to put this? It's hard to cheat. You have very strong incentives to be honest about what you think the important things are. The scoring rubric really incentivizes you to look at everything from a lot of different kinds of perspectives, to really recognize a lot of skills. And it also rewards sort of deeper thought about how to put all of these various kinds of aspects together. So I mean, the way I think of it in my own sort of curriculum mind is, I want to reach out broadly to the university and engage students with ethics, just across various kinds of the curriculum, so in business and in other areas as well. But Ethics Bowl is really like leadership training. So I run it like a sort of leadership seminar. We meet a lot. I sit back and facilitate. I let them go once they get started. And boy, once they get the hang of it, the problem is really like stopping them and making sure they go to their other classes rather than it is sort of getting them going. So I have some ideas about sort of, who to look for, how to recruit. I can share with people later. But I think the main thing in terms of retention is skill-based focused has made it very easy for me to both sell Ethics Bowl to people and also to get people to sort of apply these ethical lessons in their lives as well as everything else. So I'll let my part end with that, and we'll move it on down the line here.
All right, well, I think I'll pick up right there because Steve made a really good case for the fact that the students really do get into this and enjoy the competition of it. They enjoy the skills learning of it. They enjoy the opportunity to perhaps hone some skills that they don't have, the presentation skills. I've had students that want to do this just because they don't think they're good presenters or public speakers or whatever, and they want that opportunity. I've had students that want to be challenged to be able to think on their feet, and they know that they're going to have to do that. And of course, we have some students that, I used to debate in high school, and Oklahoma Christian no longer has a debate team, and so this is the next closest thing. And I tell them, well, it's similar to that, but it's very different. I mean, I don't have debate experience myself, but my brother did. I heard all about that from him and realized, well, there's some similarities, but there's some differences. But I think here's the evidence that, at least in my situation, of knowing that the students really do get engaged in this is this. So for the past 3 years, we typically have about 6 students on our team. Well, 2 teams of 3, but 6 students on the team. Trying to find a time of the day where 6 students and 1 faculty member can get together is really difficult. Yeah. And so we were looking at our schedules, and I just thought, and I don't give up my evenings. I protect my evenings for my family, so evenings are out. Which meant mornings, which I said to them very nervously the very first year. I said, guys, I had the schedule out. I laid it all out, and I said, the only time we can all get together is 6 a.m. from 6 to 8. You have, some of you have classes at 8. I have a class at 8, and they looked at me and said, okay. Except for one girl went, oh, you got to be kidding me. And in fact, when she graduated, and she said, I'm so, in the very last practice we had, she said, no more 6 a.m. This is the best day of my life. So, but they're that engaged that they're willing to come twice a week, 6 a.m. For ethics practice, to sit around and discuss ethical theory and philosophy in these cases. But they love it, and as well do I. But so there's evidence of the fact that yes, they do. They get engaged in this. They invest in it, and they love it, and for many reasons that Steve talked about. I think I was tasked with how do you, so once you get your members, how do you prepare them? How do you go about getting them ready for an ethics bowl or something like that? And I actually think that starts with what Steve talked about, who you're recruiting. And there are lots of different ways to recruit, and actually I think that you go about recruiting differently in a year that you establish the team than in subsequent years. And because at least in we don't have necessarily 300 students coming to you, or whatever. So there's some places where the student population is not that big to start with, and then the student population who's actually remotely interested in doing something like this is even smaller, and so then you just cast a wide net and hope you get something the very first year. Subsequent years, it's much easier. You basically work on a referral system. But preparation for us, at least, starts with the selection of it, and so we actually hold a tryout. And I do that for a couple of reasons. One, to find good people, but two, to communicate to them, this is a serious business that not everyone can do. And that we are expecting you from, even before you join the team, to do preparation. And so I would give them, I'll tell you how we do the tryouts. I give them a case from the previous year. I invite some of my faculty members to come and serve as judges. I have former team members, if they're still around, serve as judges. And we hold the tryout very similar to how the Ethics Bowl is done. And so the biggest difference is both people trying out have the exact same amount of time to present and have the opportunity to rebut the other. And then, so that's a big difference. But then my fellow faculty members or former team members serve as judges, where they interact, they ask questions, just like what happened. And so I want to see how they present, I want to see how they think, I want to see how they handle questions, knowing that this is much like a rookie or whatever that's coming in and realizing that they're, hopefully I might be able to hone some of their talents or whatever. So it starts, I think preparation starts even before they're on the team with the tryout. I don't know if anybody else does that. We do, but that's what we do. Have you been talking to some of my students? Good grief. Wow. Anyway, so there's that. And then what do we do in practice? I hate to, when I was kind of thought about, well, how do you prepare them? It's just going to be a letdown, but honestly, we go into the conference room at our College of Business, and of course, I pump them with coffee.
It's key.
Yeah, it is key. And then honestly, we simply discuss the cases and just sit down and say, well, guys, we first start off with what do you think what's the question here of this case? And it usually takes
exactly how we do it.
And it usually takes a long time just for us to kind of come to a consensus of what we think is the question of this case, because they're really well written, and you can come at this from a lot of different angles. And so just trying to determine what really is the essence of this case gets us a long way to prepping it. And then it's a matter of, well, what do we think about it? And then the discussion just continues. And I think one of the keys is if you have a diverse group, it's very helpful, because obviously debate is much more robust when you have people coming at it from very diverse backgrounds. And so I remember, was it 2 years ago we had the hunting in Texas case? Yeah. Well, we had a young man who grew up in Tuttle, and boy, he probably has more guns than the Defense Department. And he's like, what's wrong with this? Of course we can hunt exotic animals in Texas. And then we had someone from the Pacific Northwest who obviously probably doesn't own a gun, doesn't think anybody ever should own a gun, and all that. And I thought the two were going to go to fisticuffs right there in my conference room. And so just them working that out, their philosophical differences, really helps the team prepare. And so I wish there was I had more detailed description than that, but I don't. And I guess I could talk about different ways different teams approach it. Just talking to some of my colleagues, I know that some say, well, what we do is we assign certain students to, certain cases to certain students and go from there. That's successful. I think also successful is to not assign cases, to just make every student prepare every case and go from there. So I don't think there's not a one secret recipe for success, because I think we've all probably run our teams very similar, but also probably approach it differently. Yeah. And we've all had much success. So yeah.
Would you mind speaking to some of the folks that aren't familiar with it, that they don't know what case they're going to get presented? Oh, right.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point, because I got to remember, 3 years ago I had no idea what's going on. So let's describe the format of this, and perhaps that's a good way to start, because as we said, it's very similar to a more traditional debate tournament where you have these issues. Perhaps the biggest difference is you are not forced to take a side on a case. They present you with this case, and you can address that in whatever way you want, regardless of what the other team does. So it's not you have to take the affirmative and whatever. It's not that way at all. You are provided with, is it 15 cases?
Usually.
Yeah, 15 cases, and of which the day of the competition you will get 6 cases that you will actually debate. And you don't know which 6. And so for each round, and there's 3 rounds in a competition, for each round you will debate 2 cases. One that you originally present. The opposing team will have a chance to rebut your argument, and then you have a chance for to redress. So, and then you just switch roles for the second case. And so the value of assigning individual cases to specific students is they know that case really well. They can go research it on, whether it's look at what's been written in other articles, other instances, look up the actual articles from perhaps where the cases were drafted from, look at what philosophers have said about that type of issue. And they can know it pretty well. The problem with that, however, is some of your better speakers, debaters, whatever, could be taken completely out of the mix if their case isn't chosen. And so then they're sitting on the sideline and never have an opportunity to present because their case just didn't happen to be selected that competition or whatever it might be. So that's the kind of you get to be much more of an expert, I think, on the case itself if you assign specific cases to students, but you have to realize that it's quite possible that that person may be taken out of the mix simply because their case wasn't chosen. So, yes, I talked a little bit about how you can approach a case, researching it. As I mentioned, we practice twice a week for 2 hours a morning, I think. So it's about, I guess it sounds like we average about 4 to 5 hours or so a week in preparation. I, like Steve, I sit back and let the students really kind of take the lead in what we what we discuss. I say, all right, we're gonna work on this case during this practice or whatever. But after that, it's just, well, guys, what do we think? And the discussion goes from there. It's not, I don't really control per se the practice as much. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, I think part of our preparation, we use the state tournament as preparation for regionals, and hopefully we do well at regionals to make it to nationals. And even at nationals, that was an experience. The first year we didn't make it to nationals, and so obviously we didn't have a choice. The second year we were able to make it to nationals. We didn't do very well. I mean, in fact, I think we went 0-3, but at nationals. But that's okay. It was a learning experience, and if we're blessed enough to have students come back, great. along those lines, having returning students, while advantageous, isn't necessary. The students that I happen to take to nationals this year that placed right behind a UCO at the regionals, they were all three what we would call rookies. I mean, none of them had done it before, and then they went to nationals and got to the out rounds, and so therefore tied for fifth with 20 other teams. But so yeah, not having.
Come on,
there you go. There you go. All right. So having veterans isn't necessarily isn't a requirement for doing well. You can the learning curve, I think, on this stuff is pretty quick as far as how you can prep a case and all that. So so that's how I approach maybe selecting a team and getting them prepared. And again, I'm sorry, it's not some magic formula or anything like that. It really isn't. It's really just getting the students engaged in the discussion of the case, getting them thinking about it, and let their minds and the power of their minds take over. So.
Well, I will pick up from there. We do use one strategy, and that is that we kind of use a business ethics model, where we look at stakeholders and we try to do a 360. We want to be prepared for anything that the others might come up with. And it is a lot of work for the students. And by having several coaches in there, we poke holes at things. And they say, well, let's do this strategy. We poke holes at it. And what we try to do is have a primary on each case, and they usually end up with 3 cases. And then we have backups for each of those. One of the things we found is sometimes in presentation, the judges at least seem to like it when the entire team's involved. And since now, in the beginning, when we went, the person who presented had 10 minutes, and they had to do the whole thing. And now it can be passed off. So if you have a really good speaker and someone else that's their case, they can figure out everything they might have left off and go ahead and jump in, and that has worked pretty effectively. One of the things that I look at is our students are really skilled in accounting ethics. They've worked at it, we pound it, in every class. But there's a bigger world out there. And so our school's not a big liberal arts school for our business majors. They don't take a lot of LA courses. And so I think this is a character building thing. They begin to look at, it's more than just what I do, but it's also what I think and what I say and the kind of decisions that I make. So what we're doing is most of these are not business cases. They're all over the board. I'll give you some. We've dealt with pink dolphins in the Amazon, drug manufacturing, puppy mills, hospital HR problems, Google Maps, abortion, gay and lesbian issues, discrimination, you name it, we have to deal with it. So they have to face these. Then what I love to see is that our students begin to think, okay, I'm going to go out into the business world and I'm going to deal with these kinds of companies. I'm going to have to watch in their ethical makeup. Are they doing what they're supposed to be doing? Do I have to worry about the character of that company? And what are the signs I might see that something is not the way it should be? And so I think that it begins to expand their horizons dramatically. Business schools can be rather narrowly focused, and this opens it up. And so I think that then they begin to see, well, I don't know anybody that's gay or lesbian, and I don't want to, I have to deal with that. Well, what about when they hire somebody that is? Then what do they have to do? What would they do if they were in the, have you ever seen that, What Would You Do? I think it's on ABC. And I said, what would you do, if you were in the, and we've actually had some of those, some gays in a bar and someone starts harassing them, what are they supposed to do? And so it's some issues like that just expand their horizons, and then they begin to define themselves. Well, what kind of an ethical person am I? If I think it's fun to make fun of people who are different in any way, then my ethics are challenged, you know. So some of that we really enjoy. Another thing that I enjoy is, and like our coaches do, is the hands-on with these students. You really get to know these people. You form long-lasting friendships. And for our students, most of them have no problem with the analysis and the strategies, but they have trouble speaking. And so it is practice for them. In fact, the only girl on our team this year is a Chinese American. We had a very diverse one. We had a Chinese citizen who was part of our team, and he was trained in debate in China. So we had to teach him to say certain words, and he was very nervous about it, but he did a very good job. And the girl that was Chinese American, she would get flustered really easily, but her team for 2 years in a row did really well. And so it was amazing to see the change in her poise and confidence. She got a great job exiting, and she's very, very happy in it. And so it's one of those things that it changed her, and it changes these students. Some of them don't need to be changed, but for our students who tend to be a little bit, come from a little bit less economic, socioeconomic level, it changes them, and it gives them confidence. We had several that were really reticent to speak. We had some that were really good at it, but it will change them. And we don't do tryouts. If I did, I would not have a single team member. We teach them in the arguments. What we try to do is get them to debate with one another about this. And we just go round and round. And we will poke holes in what they're saying and things like that. They begin to develop a confidence within the group, and then it goes outside. And like I said, we were just a complete wash in Oklahoma last fall, and then we did very well in Texas. Some of that's luck. It depends on who you're against. Sometimes it's a little bit of luck in who your judges are.
Well, that's why Oklahoma's a bloodbath, because there are a lot of good teams in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
It really is the toughest tournament we go to.
Yeah, it is. But it's great preparation, and it gives them the confidence. When we washed out, I was like, guys, what did you learn? Oh, well, I know what we need to do now. But they had never seen it. So I was amazed that the first team I took came in runner-up to nationals, and they would have done really well at nationals. But we walked in, we didn't even know what it was going to be. And so that's why I said, if we have any luck, throw the first one so we can see what happens here. And so there's so much that they learn, and the confidence level goes way up. And I know that the teams were exhausted by the time we got through nationals. And because with nationals, you get, we get 9 cases for Texas. We get 15 for nationals. And the ones that come from Texas have footnotes, and they cite their sources. The ones from national, nothing. So you have to do all the research from scratch. I mean, you don't even have a guide as to where to go. But you usually, if they will research them far enough, they'll find out what the real story was. Not that it matters, but it gives you some insight into what they're trying to bring out in the story that they tell. And so, I mean, there's some that the coaches have scratched their head and going, what in the world did this come from? But they're all ripped from the headlines. And so it's a great adventure, if nothing else, for the students.
They're very emotionally provocative cases on purpose.
Very. And some of them you just don't, I don't know how I'm going to talk about this, for some of the kids.
What is the...
I was going to say, why don't we go ahead and, you guys want to open it up for the Q&A
sure.
right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I wanted to see, this is my first year teaching or leading the ethics team at Oklahoma City University, so I'm quite new at the situation, although I've observed several of the competitions. Can you speak to what the judges are looking for in particular? I know you mentioned that they like it when everyone is participating, but is there a particular rubric that they use, or is there something that they look for?
Yeah, we could have.
Yep. Colin, yeah, he's judge, so that there is a rubric. Do you want to comment on how that works? Because it's not like we know.
Colin, go ahead and restate the question. To the mic.
Okay, so the question is, what are judges looking for as we judge the competition? I've been fortunate that Shannon and others have let me participate, and then I've been able to expand that. I've been able to judge 11 competitions in the last 3 years through nationals, so it's been great fun. Judges have rules to go by in the process and the decorum as well. One of those is that we do not judge based on our opinion of the case. We base judging is a scoring mechanism based on elements of the presentation and the rebut. So how well did they state their case? Did they capture the ethical elements of the question that was put forth to them from the case? Did they look at all aspects of the case and consider all arguments? And so it's really more of how they've prepared and they've presented, and zero about what the judge thinks of their own opinion of that case. So it's more of a judge of the students and their ability to work as a team, their thoughtfulness, their thoroughness, and how well they've presented.
And you might want to speak about what the advantage is of the question about the judging, where the judges come from. Colin can probably talk about that. We try to get community leaders, people who know something about ethics, to present, but you might want to talk about the advantages from the university standing and who you're interacting with.
Yeah, I was going to mention that too. One thing, just following up with Colin, is because of that rubric, because of what Colin just described, that's how this competition can be run in such a way that both teams can actually agree upon the solution to the case. It's all a matter of how they construct their argument and how they've approached it and all that. So that's perhaps the biggest difference. But the judges that are assembled for the state competition, well, all the competitions, but especially the state competition, are just outstanding. And of course, Colin is a judge extraordinaire. It's such a blessing to see him down at the state and then see him at the regionals, and he even travels to the nationals and was a judge. And that's just awesome. The reason it's so beneficial is not only the quality, a high quality of the judges and their experience that they're bringing to the table from industry and all sectors of our community, but what it means to the students. One of the ways that we get students to come to the teams is just we tell them the networking opportunities that they will have to meet and mingle with some of our community leaders who are on the judging panels. And so that is a real advantage for not just the universities, but for our students as well. So they get this, that's another skill that they get, is they get networking skills, because they have these opportunities before and after rounds, but at the lunch or whatever. And so that's really outstanding to be able to do that.
We have a banquet in San Antonio.
Yeah. So,
Jeff, that rubric is on the website, right?
Right. Correct.
Yes. One thing I would say too, our judges in Oklahoma are great. They're really good. And because of it, I think Shannon had a lot to do with getting Texas to tone down the number of philosophy judges and add in business and professional, because not everybody that's coming there as a student is a philosophy major. And I remember one time my team just went like this. Someone asked, what theorem, and it was way down about 6, would justify your argument? They looked at me like, we are dead. Because mine are not philosophy majors. I'm real happy if I can get one that's had a philosophy course. But it's supposed to be practical and applied ethics. And so that's what I said about sometimes it's a little bit of luck with your judges from the standpoint that the students are not really required. In fact, in the national ones, it said we don't want to hear about ethical theories. We want to hear about ethical practices. And so that's kind of important. And one of the original chairman of the Nationals came and talked to the groups after the ceremony in San Antonio for the winners. And one of the things he said is you're better off to never quote a philosophy. Because if you quote it wrong, that's when you get marked off. Okay, don't use the wrong ethical consideration, but you can talk about the ethics of the situation. So that's something else too. I mean, we were just terrified of doing some of this with these judges, and it works out. You figure out how to do it after that.
I found that there is a little bit of difference in the judging pools, and in a certain sense, the sort of national judging pool. It's the competition is run at the same time as the Association for Practical and Professional Ethics. So you do have what's the best way to put this? There are a lot of professionals who have a lot of philosophy training at the APPE, but I think you're exactly right. It helps to know something about the sort of general schools of thought in philosophy. It never pays to sort of name check all the stuff. If you're saying, well, here's what Kant would say, nobody wants to know that. They want to know maybe about those kinds of considerations. And actually, I usually assign the new students on my ethics bowl team a book by Michael Sandel called Justice, which is a nice little overview of ethical theory stuff, but it's all very practically done. And it lets them get an idea of what people might be talking about without giving them a lot of jargon, which is pretty nice. Now, and it's funny because, when my first team ever was very sort of philosopher heavy because I went to where I knew where the smart kids were, which was my department. But ours has got, last year was the first time I had 0 philosophy majors to start the year, although I turned 2 of them, I want you to know. I have two students on the team who are coming back who are economics and philosophy majors, which is what I do. So I was very happy about that.